Welcome to the Sam and Joe VA Show, where we teach women just like you how to create your very own in-demand virtual assistant business.
We're your hosts, Sam and Joe, and get ready to have the control, flexibility, and freedom you've always dreamed of.
Welcome to episode 14, How to Distinguish Yourself from Other Virtual Assistants.
I am so excited about this episode and our guest. Our guest is amazing. The amazing Pallas Hupe Cotter is joining us today to talk about all things authentic and finding your voice and being yourself and standing out from the crowd.
Thank you so much to both of you. I really have been so looking forward to doing this because one of my passions in life is helping people really own the value that they have and see it sometimes for the very first time. And so when you said that line, stand out, I can sort of feel some of your audience members going, no, I don't want to stand out. We all have at some point or another felt the imposter syndrome, right? I would say each of us probably has been in a situation like that. Have you?
Yes.
All the time.
Today.
Well, honestly, it happens to everybody. And I think that when you say stand out, then people feel that they're going to get caught out because, oh gosh, maybe I'm not going to live up to the words that I'm using to describe who I am and what I do. And so this gets into me helping the people that I work with, and today it's your audience, really get down to find the words that describe who you are authentically, what you can own about yourself, and start to see how that differs from other people. So I'm happy to start, but let's see if we start with any questions from you first before I launch, because I'll get passionate pretty fast.
I can tell you're so excited about this topic. Like, this is what you're passionate about, which is why we wanted you to come on and be our guest today. And so, Pallas, we met probably 7 years ago when we were first starting our businesses in Wellington. But you live now down in the beautiful Alexandra, and every time I see the weather on the news and it says that Alexandra is -3, I think of you, Pallas.
Well, and it can get cold. I have to say, I'm older than I was when I lived in such a cold climate, and so I feel it more. But it is absolutely gorgeous, and you just rug up really well, and then you're fine. So.
Yeah.
And Joe, you had a chance to come down and visit, which was really cool because the best part about being down here is sharing it with others.
Yeah, it's such a great destination down there. So if anyone doesn't know where Alexandra is, it's the Central Otago, is it? Central Otago in the South Island of New Zealand. So you'll probably hear that Pallas actually doesn't have a New Zealand accent. So let's touch on that a little. So Pallas, you were a news anchor for 20 years over in the US. And then you decided one day that you just wanted something different in your life, didn't you?
Well, it was a joint decision with my husband and myself, and we wanted something different for our kids as well. And I loved my job, but I also loved my family, and I wasn't seeing much of them. And we wanted our children to have a broader perspective of the world. So I had lived overseas as a teenager and older, and my husband had traveled for his work. And so he got an opportunity one night. I came home from the news, 11:30 at night. He was at his desk. Didn't often happen, where he would wait up, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "I just got a tweet about a job in New Zealand." And then he didn't even finish it. And I dropped my briefcase and said, yes, I'd never been. I just knew it was the right place to go.
Wow, that's amazing. What a story. That was it. So
That was
have you heard anything about New Zealand? Because, I mean, we're a long way away from most places.
Yes, but your reputation, and can I say our, because I'm now a citizen?
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you. Really, it has a reach around the world. And back then people were saying, can I get in your suitcase? And I don't know what it is, but there is this impression and this feeling. And so I couldn't have told you a lot about it, but I just knew that it would be a place that would feel like home. And it has since day one.
Oh, that's amazing. Well, so let's get into this, because Sam, you and I, we hear from VAs all the time that there's so many virtual assistants. And so when they sort of make the decision, they jump into the industry and then they see, oh wow, there's a lot of virtual assistants all around the world. How am I ever going to stand out? How am I going to find clients? What makes me different? And yeah, like you say, Pallas, that imposter syndrome comes in. And so we hear that all the time, don't we, Sam?
Oh, all the time. I mean, this was me 6 years ago. I remember when I was first starting out, the first thing you do is kind of look around you to the other virtual assistants and see what they're doing and immediately feel inadequate. And there's no way I'm going to be able to do what they're doing. And it took a good 12 months for me to finally realize, look, I've got to be myself, warts and all. I've got to be myself. That's what makes my business special, is me. But it's scary. It's scary kind of putting it all out there.
It is. It really is. And, it's not our fault and your fault for feeling that way, because we are hardwired to feel that way. We go back to that caveman mentality, and we need it to survive. So when you are comparing yourself to others or putting yourself out there or, standing out, you are away from the group and therefore vulnerable to judgment, vulnerable to saber-toothed tigers. And even though they don't exist anymore, we still respond in the same way. But this is how I try to deal with that. I try to say, and you put it so well, Sam, it's not about, look how great I am. This is how I can help you. This is the best that I have to offer, and I want to use it to help you. So first of all, reframe it not as a big spotlight on yourself, but the sort of open-handed, how can I serve best? I think that especially fits with the Kiwi culture, where there is the tall poppy syndrome.
Yes.
I have a friend from Mexico, and she said, you have to stand out because there's so many people there and there's so much competition. But then the idea of standing out, it's not about a comparison thing in one sense. It's just about being different. As you said, you are yourself. And when people choose you, that's who they're choosing to work with for any number of reasons. If you don't mind, I'll share a quick story about when I presented to a group of administrative assistants. They were not virtual assistants, but there was a whole room full of them. And we started asking this question, what makes you any different? And all of them shrugged and said, we all have the same skills. Maybe she's particularly good with Word doc or something like that, or I don't know your terminology, so I'll probably say it wrong. But anyway, Microsoft Suite. But generally, we all have the same skills. And so then I asked, what do you do on the weekends? What do you do in your free time? You would never believe who was sitting in that room. One was a race car driver. One was a hot air balloon pilot. One was a woman who flipped houses and did all the reno work herself. And so I started to say, okay, so what does it take to be a race car driver? I mean, let's think about that. What kind of skills does it take?
Yeah, I mean,
I'm asking you.
Being able to push the fear aside, being able to really push yourself to the limits and trust in yourself and your abilities.
Yeah, exactly. And then just really quick reflexes too. So under pressure, thinking clearly, overcoming the fear, and then really having quick reflexes to react and trusting yourself that you'll do the right thing. The renovation skills can be everything from handyman skills to
budgeting, organizing,
planning. Exactly. So you start to get into, look at all the different things that I do when I just don't even consider them of any value because it's what I do in my free time or for fun, that can start to say, this is how I'm different from one another. So, you and Sam met each other. And what would you say are your complementary skills? I'm going to put you on the spot.
Yeah. So I think so. Sam is a really amazing writer, great at social media, great at pulling people together and them really feeling supported and cared about. She's just amazing at building the community of virtual assistants that we have. That's definitely her strength. So we have Sam writing all of our content and words and managing the social media side of things.
So it's that real social connection and communication part. Okay.
Yeah, and that's a bit that I'm passionate about. That's the bit that when I'm sitting down, it doesn't feel like work. Whereas I look at the skills and the strengths that Joe brings to our team, and I just think, my goodness, I can't think of anything worse sitting there and selling myself and selling it so well, and all the organizing and the planning. It's so we're so different, but it works. It really works.
And there you go. You're different, but you complement one another and you're stronger together.
Yes.
And look at the power in asking one another. So when we say, oh, I don't know what makes me different, what we need to do is turn to someone who knows us really well and say, or ask, what do I do best? Tell me what I do best. Or what do I seem to be most passionate about when I'm talking about things with you? And the information we get from people who know us, either family or friends, or even clients that we work with, is invaluable. So when I do work with people, I do send out surveys to get some of that outside information in. So I'm going to, at this point, here comes the wall of words, because I'm going to tell you what I base this on. And it's something called the POP process, because my company is called Pop. And the website is Make Your Life Pop if you're interested. And I use something called the BOM model. So I had a business partner at the time, and she and I said, when you talk about someone's personality, the metaphor is an onion. And when you cut into an onion, all the layers are the same. And who wants to talk about onions all day anyway? So we said, what do we want to talk about? How about chocolate? So we came up with this idea of the handcrafted bonbon, the multi-layer chocolate with all these flavors and textures. That fancy box of chocolate that you open up and each one is different.
Yeah, the good stuff. The good stuff.
Good stuff. Exactly. And it's so good because you know exactly what you're getting when you open that box.
Yeah.
And so what kind of chocolates do you like? Do you have different tastes in chocolates?
I'm a fudge girl. Fudge.
Okay. Fudge. Yep. How about you, Joe?
I like lots of different flavors and flavors mixed together. And yeah, I love trying something new. So, and I think that actually quite suits my personality style because I love variety.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if I was to choose one thing, I'd probably go the berry and biscuits. Whitaker's chocolate is definitely my favorite because there's lots of different things in there. Yeah.
Exactly right. Now we're all craving chocolate, so sorry about that. Yeah, the thing is that when people go to choose a chocolate, they either know exactly who they were. So Sam said, I'm a fudge girl. So she's looking for whatever chocolate has a little bit of fudge in it. And the idea is if you open a generic box of chocolate where everything is pretty and it has a little gold wrapper on it and it's sitting in its mold, you can't tell. You can't tell one from the other, what the difference is going to be like, or if there's going to be any difference. But if you have a chocolate that has little chunks of fudge sitting on the outside of a beautifully molded chocolate, or that sort of, berry bits on the top, dehydrated berries is what I'm thinking about. Now we're even hungrier. Sorry. So, exactly, you pick that one, you say, that's what I want. And I know exactly what I'm getting. That taste and flavor sensation, that experience of that chocolate. So essentially, that's what I'm saying to people is that you are a fancy chocolate and you have many layers in you. At the core, where the nut or the nougat is, that is your talents, your capabilities, the gifts that you were given when you were born. So maybe it is the social connection that Sam has, or that really incisive organizing skill that Joe has. Then the next layer is the caramel layer, and it's the passions and values. So yes, if you're doing something you're passionate about, you can do it for hours. Or if you do something that violates your values, then that doesn't work, So you want to make sure those values come through too. Like for me, it's contribution and helping others recognize their values. So that's one of my values that comes through, I hope, in everything I do. Then the texture. You talked about that biscuit in that chocolate, Joe, and that's the texture, that's the crunch, that's your skills on your CV or resume, the professional skills, all those things that VAs know how to do that may be like one another, but mixed in with personal experience. So another quick story. I was speaking in front of a group of young teachers. Actually, they weren't young. Some were young. Some had been, very experienced, many decades in the classroom. And one of the teachers said, I just got my teaching certificate. I really have nothing to offer. And I said, well, are you teaching now? And she said, no. What did you do? I traveled. You traveled where? Europe. Oh, do you speak all the languages? No. So how did you get, from place to place and get your message across? And she said, well, you start using your hands and could that be a valuable skill in the classroom when you're trying to get through to, students who are just sitting there with glazed eyes? So when you start to unpack all these things about your life and you start to see all those flavors and textures come through, and they're just different, as you said, from everybody else. And then the candy coating is what's on the outside that people can really see. And those are the signals that you're sending. So if you are saying, that you love that social connection in social media, I'm sure you're messaging that every day, Sam. And anyone who knows Jo knows that she's in there making systems and processes work more smoothly. So you're doing it, and the idea is that you need to start expressing it. So do that in a strategic way.
Yeah. I've got a question for you. And we hear this a lot. The being authentic is a message that Jo and I teach a lot to virtual assistants that come to us for advice and support.
Yeah.
But we hear a common response we get is, oh, but what if people aren't going to like me?
Yeah.
What if I turn people off? What if those potential clients that land on my website or, scroll through my social media feed get put off because I am putting myself out there? How would you answer that?
I'd answer that with another question. Do you want to work with someone like that? Do you want to work with someone who's put off by who you are?
Yes.
No. It's like the chocolate. When someone says, I want, I like to think of myself as a dark chocolate with ginger, crystallized ginger or something with a little bit of bite and a little bit of sweetness. And I want someone who is willing to have something that has a little bit of bite. I'm not all sweetness and light. I may try to be right now, but I do challenge the people that I work with. I do. And so I don't want to work with someone who's going to be put off by the challenge, because that's not going to work. They're going to shut down, and we're not going to have a good working relationship. So there is a chance that someone might not choose you, and you're absolutely right. But that means that's not the person for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. 120%.
Yeah.
Because what you're essentially going to do by putting your authentic self out there and having your messaging, like what's important to you, and like your bonbon is shown to the world, you're going to attract the people that are on the same vibe. You're going to do a great job for them. They're going to be providing you the work in a really like smooth way, because you just connect and you're just on the same page. So everything is just the flow on effect is going to be awesome, and it's going to be a great relationship.
Well, and I'm thinking about, Jo, the virtual assistants who work at Strictly Savvy. And, if you look at their bios, they all have something a little bit different, and they all have different personalities. And some have a little more sass, some are more quiet and reserved. And you pair them with clients where that that's going to be a good combination. Mm-hmm. So, that's the way the world works. That's human nature. And we cannot please everybody all the time. We know this to be true, but it triggers that fear of being judged, of standing out and being different and away from the group, and camouflaged by the group in a way. So I get it. It's natural. Expect it, own it, and move past it. And that's the best advice I can give.
So what about if we think about like LinkedIn profiles and our messaging that we have on there, and we're describing ourselves and what we can bring to someone? How like we all think, oh, but it needs to be super professional. So how do people reconcile like what they should put in a LinkedIn profile and talk about themselves with being authentically their self?
So I use the phrase strategic authenticity. So yes, be authentic, but choose the way you be authentic. Choose the things you turn the volume up on, I say, or volume down on. So Sam said, this is me, warts and all. Well, generally, we go out and we dress a certain way, and we go comb our hair. We do things sort of to keep a minimum standard of social acceptability. And so, these are the things that's strategic, because people make their first impressions in 7 seconds or less. So they look at you and they make a judgment. Again, hardwiring. We need to know if you're friend or foe. So yes, you want to go out there and say, hey, I love renovating homes, and here are how some of those skills, can be pulled out and infuse the work that I do. So if you work with me, I'm somebody who can help you, get supplies for the office at a really good rate, and then see a project all the way through to the end and make sure all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So you can use metaphors and stories from your life to explain what you are. But yeah, you want to make sure that what you're doing is making your strongest skills clear, so that people know exactly what skill set they can get from you. A little hint of what your passions are and what your values are, so they know. You'll get really excited by putting together Excel sheets. And if you do, God bless you. But, perhaps that is where you just love numbers and putting them into columns and making them make sense. And then a little bit about your experience. So on my LinkedIn, it says, 20 years in television news, but really short and sweet, because it doesn't really apply to much of what I do today, but it's an important part of my credibility. But most importantly, you have to think, okay, here's who I am and here's what I have to offer. How does this help others? So when you are writing something about what you do, be thinking about the person looking for you. Well, what does this person want? How do you change their lives or support them? So that's what I would make clear, and then back it up with all those different layers that I talked about.
That's fantastic. I love the like weaving something you're really interested in, making it a metaphor, and then how it can relate to doing a really great job. That's a really great tip. Thanks, Pallas.
Oh, sure. Well, there are athletes out there who do Ironman races and things like that. Again, I don't even know the terminology. It's so far from my reality, but that can be a really cool metaphor for what they bring to the job. And in fact, I know someone who got a job because she did do the Ironman races, and they knew what was involved in that. So highlighting something that's a really big part of your life, but may not be part of your work life, but really is sort of reflected in how you work, is a really effective tool.
And so Sam and I talk a lot about building relationships, and if you need to do that just online, maybe you've got young children at home and you can't get out to real networking events. Oh, I shouldn't say real, I mean in-person networking events.
Yeah.
And so we talk a lot about showing up online and doing videos and pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and showing your authentic self on video. So for those who just had that little pang of like, oh gosh, I could never do that. Like, what's your tips and thoughts on how to be authentic on video when it's such a scary thing to do for most people?
It's really scary because you're looking at an unblinking eye with no feedback. So you just don't know how you're coming across. And it takes a lot of practice. So I was actually just giving a training to professors yesterday who are in the deep end. Overnight, they had to put everything online. And the skill set of presenting in front of the classroom and that comfort level is completely different looking at this unblinking eye that doesn't answer back. So first of all, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is the cool thing that people really relate to, when you sit down and with a coffee cup and say, I was working so late last night, it's automatically something that they can relate to. But also, I'm just talking to the camera like I'm talking to an individual person. Hard to do, again, when you're just staring at that camera. And you'll notice I have my eyes on the camera. I'm not looking down at you, much as I want to. That eye contact with the camera is really important. So I said, cut out a little picture of someone you love. Maybe it's your child or something, but with the little hole in the middle, obviously, so you don't cover the camera. So you're looking at a face, a little avatar taped around the camera, because automatically it's at least a face that's looking back at you, and it will trigger more relaxation basically in you, because you're tricking your brain that you're talking to someone in particular. Better done than perfect, Joe. Isn't that one of your favorite phrases?
Yeah, imperfect action. Yeah.
That's such an amazing tip. I mean, I'm gonna start doing that, I think, next week for sure.
Yeah.
It's really hard. As you said, when you're talking to somebody in person, you see their reactions, don't you? And then you kind of change the way that you are talking depending on how they're reacting to you, whether it's facial expressions or body language. When you're talking to a camera, you've got no idea how people are reacting, and it can freeze you at times.
Yes, absolutely. And it takes many years. And this is what I said to the professors. It's not something you're going to master overnight, even though you're sort of being expected to. So, it's frustrating. It's a new muscle that you're using, but like with any muscle, the more you use it, the stronger it will get. And yeah, totally natural to be afraid. Again, you're standing out, people are looking at you, and some people are judging you, but you're being brave, you're being vulnerable, and there's a very clear power, as Brene Brown says, in being vulnerable. There's something that people can really relate to, and they say, wow, she's doing it, I was thinking of a picture of a profile photo on LinkedIn. this lovely and brave young woman who put this photo out there, and she said, I've been told that I weigh too much and I shouldn't put my face on, on social media because, right, awful. And yet the likes under her photo for her bravery in doing that was just amazing. Now, sure, there will be trolls, but that's life. And unfortunately, we'll have to deal with it. But again, it's just like opening that box of fancy chocolates. So what? Somebody doesn't like, pistachio. So they're not going to choose pistachio. But gosh, someone's going to say, that takes guts. That takes courage. And that's the kind of person I want to work for me.
There's so much strength in vulnerability, isn't there?
There really, really is. It doesn't feel strong.
No.
And that's the thing. I read a book in my 20s called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it was one of the most valuable phrases that I ever learned. Because going back to that imposter syndrome, going back to the idea that when you put yourself out there, you're working against your hardwiring. All of that is really challenging, uncomfortable to the point that it can make us feel ill. But that's where the magic happens. That's where the change and the transformation happens. I work out with a trainer, and we get to that fourth set and I can barely lift or do whatever she's asking me to do. And she's like, nothing before this matters. Nothing matters. This is what matters. This last raggedy, ugly bit is what matters.
Yeah.
That's where the strength comes. That's where the growth comes.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite sayings too. Feel the fear and do it anyway. And that's something that I've tried to kind of live my life by a lot, because I'm naturally quite a fearful person. And my daughter, who's coming up for 9, she's struggled with her nerves a lot in the past couple of years. This year, however, she's just come out of her shell, and it's just so amazing to see. And she said something to me the other day. I could see, it was before school, there was something happening. I can't remember quite what it was, but I could see that she was overthinking and she was getting quite nervous. And I said, are you okay, honey? And she said, I'm nervous, but I'm not going to let it stop me having fun. I thought, oh my God, if an 8-year-old has got that, what's stopping a 30, 40-year-old person doing it?
Well, it's one of the hardest things, and yet the most important thing that we need to learn how to do. And it goes back to that animal, reptile, or caveman brain, however you choose to refer to it. We have the ability as human beings to use this part of the brain, take cognitive control and say, okay, that is a fear that's a little out of whack with what the worst case scenario could be here. And so often I'll just, when I work with clients, say, okay, let's look at what the worst case scenario is, and it's usually far less frightening when you say it out loud than what it could be. Oh, so you didn't get that client. Oh, wow. No one's going to die.
Yeah, so, I love that. I always say to myself, if there's something that I'm nervous about doing, I'm like, what's the worst that could happen? I pick up the phone, I say something and they say no, or I get rejected. It's like you say, it's not life or death. You're still going to be alive and you can still carry on. Yeah.
And you can take that one step further. I say I aim for 100 no's, because if you just expect that you're going to get 100 no's, then when you get that yes at call 25, it feels like a gift, such a bonus. But we do have the ability to rise above. It just, again, takes practice, seeing it, recognizing it, and taking that step to step beyond that comfort zone and into that area of the unknown. But I did a TEDx talk, and one of the things I said was fear is very often false evidence appearing real, which is not mine. It comes from someone else. But that said, fear is also the loudest voice in our ear. Just loud and obnoxious, frankly, and all those little voices saying, oh, but, why not try? Or you can do this. They get drowned out because we have this loud, obnoxious voice. So you have to say, thank you, pat it on its head, stick it on a shelf. Now let's listen to some of the quieter voices because we have many voices in there.
Well, and it takes us back to what you said at the very start. This is caveman times, hardwiring, so we look out for our safety. If something is scary, then we have this fear that jumps in because we don't want to be eaten by a saber-toothed tiger. Right. And there are paper tigers out there that can get us, and that is, the work that we have to do. But those aren't usually saber-toothed. They're not going to be fatal if we don't do them, to the level of perfection that we were expecting, or
or expecting of ourselves, because usually that's where it comes from ourselves, not from others.
Yeah, that's very true. What's your advice, Pallas, on the virtual assistants that come into the industry after spending some time in the corporate world? A lot of them have had some time off to have children. So they've had a few years where they've kind of maybe lost themselves a bit, and maybe they don't know where their passion is anymore. And maybe they've lost their voice. So they've got this dream of starting up their own business, but they just don't know how to be authentic because they've just lost themselves.
I have to say that I commiserate, I sympathize, because I did the news for 20 years, and there were certain things about it that I loved, and there were certain things about it increasingly that I didn't love. And when I came out of it and I moved to New Zealand, I said, what am I going to do? And I literally had to turn to my husband and ask, so what am I best at doing? What do I seem to value the most? Because I hadn't looked for so long at that. And then when, of course, you have kids, you're thinking about their needs and their growth and development. So, start with that bonbon model. And this is why, one of the reasons we chose chocolate, because I dare you to forget that now, at the center, core, gifts and talents and capabilities, soft layer, vulnerable layer, caramel layer, passions and values, crunch layer, skills, what you put on your CV, but your life experience. So going out of the workforce, having children, devoting yourself to that, learning how to do that job gives you all these other skills, everything from, a taxi driver to, finding the best bargains on things and knowing where to source things, to time management skills, etc. So think about that bonbon layer, and then think about how you can, again, tell stories that say, well, I was out of the workforce, but this is what I learned about time management, because I learned that a working mother will produce more than any other worker on the planet. They are so motivated to get the work done and get it done well so that they can balance both sides. And I'm assuming you're both nodding and saying, yes, you agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I did write an ebook on this. It's on Amazon and it's less than $5, but it really helps to write this stuff down or go through a process where you ask those questions.
What's the book? What's the book?
Make Your Life Pop.
What else? Make Your Life Pop is amazing. I love that you use that. It's so true. If we don't make our lives pop, no one is going to do it for us, and we're all completely in control of that. Yeah, I love that. So we'll put that down in the show notes, a link to that book.
Thank you. And in New Zealand, I notice everyone uses the words pop all the time. So I love it. We'll pop here. We'll pop that in there. Well, yeah. So,
Yes.
Yeah. And I have to say, the graphic design team at Strictly Savvy came up with the graphics for that. So I am indebted to you for that talent. And a talent I do not have. But and POP stands for the power of passion, purpose, and personality. Now, I'm American. We talk about these words, but I really mean, when you identify what you're passionate about and how that overlaps with the skills that you have or that you've built, that's when you start to find your purpose. And then the next step, and this is what we've been talking about this whole time, is how do you express that with your individual personality? Be the fancy chocolate that you are.
Oh, I just love it. And I really hope that everyone listening can now see that it doesn't matter what you've done leading up to this point of coming into the virtual assistant industry, or even if you've been in here for a while, we all have unique talents, unique skills, unique capabilities, unique values, and the skills that we've developed, no matter whether that's in a corporate role, or it's an administrator role, or an accounts role, or being a mum. We all have amazing skills that we've developed and created, and that's the stuff that we can now present as our service offerings to clients. And I think the overarching message here is that, yes, not everyone's going to like you, and that's absolutely okay. But what you are going to attract are the ones that you're going to do great work with. You're just going to be on that same vibe, and your business is going to take off because of it.
Yeah. Oh, and when you click with someone, and it becomes a very deep and productive relationship very quickly. Like my original business partner, 2 + 2 does not equal 4. Often it equals 6 or 8. And look at the two of you. I think it's the same thing.
Pallas, I honestly think we could sit here and talk about this topic all day. I think we're all so passionate about it. Thank you so much. And you're coming back. You're going to come and be one of our 2021 VA Summit speakers, which is amazing. So I know we're so looking forward to that. It's going to be fantastic.
Thank you. And if anyone who's watching is attending that, I would love to know, in the comment section, what you want to know more about, like what really hits a nerve with you or resonates with you that you want to explore more or want more information on, because this is what I want to do. I can talk all day, about this, but I want to talk about something that's really going to work for you. So this is a great opportunity to get feedback before the summit comes.
Fantastic. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Pallas. And for everyone listening, make sure you check Pallas out at makeyourlifepop.com. Honestly, you just read Pallas's bio and it's mind-blowing. That's why I came in today just thinking, I'm not worthy.
No, that's the whole thing. We're just different. We just have different experiences. I am constantly amazed. I'll finish with one final story. When I was in the news, people would say, who did you interview that was a celebrity that left an impression? I don't really remember. But what I remember were the people I would meet in the communities who were doing something of value or had this talent that you would never believe. Just the everyday man on the street or woman on the street, as they were referred to. Those people are the people that stuck with me because they were real, they were passionate, and they had this amazing value that they often didn't recognize. So if you're going to just remember one thing, remember that. You may not see it yourself, but everyone is adding to this world in some way. Ask someone to tell you how you are, and you will be amazed.
Thanks to everyone for listening to this episode of the Sam and Joe VA Show. If you'd like to find out more, head to the Savvy School website to check out the amazing Members Club and find more free resources.
You can find us at savvyschool.co.nz.